in a stunning development that has sent shockwaves through the mining community and reality television industry. Chris Doumit, the beloved gold room operator from Discovery Channel's hit show, Gold Rush, has been sentenced to life imprisonment. The verdict was delivered yesterday in a packed Oregon courtroom, concluding what prosecutors called the most sophisticated gold laundering operation in modern American history. Doumit, 76, known to millions of viewers for his cheerful demeanor, cigar smoking, and expertise in the gold room, sat motionless as Judge Eleanor Simmons delivered the maximum sentence possible. The white-bearded miner, who began his career as a carpenter before becoming one of the most recognizable faces in reality television mining, was convicted on multiple charges including racketeering, money laundering, tax evasion, and conspiracy to defraud the United States government. "The evidence presented leaves no room for reasonable doubt," stated Judge Simmons during sentencing. For over a decade, Mr. Doumit systematically exploited his position of trust to orchestrate a criminal enterprise of extraordinary complexity and scale. The court cannot ignore the calculated nature of these crimes, nor their devastating impact on legitimate mining operations throughout the Pacific Northwest. The investigation began 3 years ago, when discrepancies were noticed between reported gold totals on the television show and official tax filings from operations where Doumit worked. Federal investigators initially suspected simple tax evasion, but uncovered what they described as an elaborate shell game, involving multiple international accounts and sophisticated methods of concealing gold quantities. Lead prosecutor Jonathan Hargrove detailed how Doumit had allegedly used his position as gold room operator across multiple mining operations featured on the show to systematically underreport gold recoveries. Mr. Doumit's friendly, grandfatherly persona was the perfect cover, Hargrove told the jury during closing arguments. Who would suspect that the man smoking cigars and making jokes was actually orchestrating one of the largest precious metals laundering operations we've ever seen? The prosecution's case revealed that Doumit had established connections with black market gold buyers across 5 countries, utilizing a network of intermediaries who would transport the stolen gold through a series of complex handoffs designed to obscure its origin. Financial investigators testified that Doumit had created at least 17 shell companies across Nevada, Wyoming, and offshore locations to launder proceeds from the stolen gold. "This wasn't amateur hour," explained FBI Special Agent Kimberly Ramirez, who led the financial investigation. Mr. Doumit utilized sophisticated techniques typically associated with organized crime syndicates, including digital cryptocurrency conversions, strategic property investments in foreign countries, and the establishment of seemingly legitimate businesses that existed solely to clean dirty money. The courtroom fell silent as prosecutors displayed a map showing properties allegedly purchased with proceeds from the scheme, including luxury homes in Costa Rica, Thailand, and Portugal, all registered to various corporate entities controlled by Doumit through elaborate legal structures. Bank records revealed over $4.2 million in transfers to these properties over 8 years, none of which had been reported on Doumit's tax returns. Parker Schnabel, the young mining prodigy who employed Doumit for several seasons, appeared visibly distressed as he testified about discovering inconsistencies in his operation's gold totals. Schnabel's testimony included detailed accounts of specific cleanups, where the gold totals announced on camera differed significantly from what was actually deposited in the operation's accounts. "I trusted Chris completely," Schnabel testified, avoiding eye contact with his former employee. "He was like family to me. When I started noticing that our gold totals didn't match what we were seeing during cleanups, I initially thought it was just measurement error or accounting mistakes. I never imagined Chris could be behind it." Schnabel described a particular incident during the filming of Season 7, when a cleanup yielded what appeared to be over 100 ounces on camera, but only 82 ounces were recorded in the official books. When I questioned the discrepancy, Chris explained it away as camera angles making the gold look more substantial and suggested that the scale might need recalibration. His explanations always seemed reasonable, and I wanted to believe him. Rick Ness, another prominent miner from the show, provided damaging testimony about conversations with Doumit regarding what prosecutors termed the gold skimming operation. Ness described how Doumit had approached him about expanding the scheme to his operation, a proposition Ness claimed to have rejected immediately. "He told me everyone was doing it and that the production company would never notice," Ness testified. He said it was just mining tax and that we deserved it for putting up with the cameras in our faces all day. When I refused, he laughed it off as a joke, but I could tell he was serious. Ness further testified that Doumit had outlined a specific methodology for the theft, involving the strategic removal of gold during the weighing process, careful manipulation of scale readings when cameras weren't focused directly on the display, and a technique for treating gold with certain solutions to temporarily increase its apparent weight during on-camera weighs. He called it television gold versus real gold, Ness explained. The idea was that viewers would see impressive numbers on screen. The mining operation would report lower but still profitable figures to owners and investors, and the difference would go into what Chris called the retirement fund. Perhaps the most devastating testimony came from Tony Beets, the veteran Klondike miner known for his colorful language and aggressive mining style. Beets testified that he had confronted Doumit years ago after suspecting gold was disappearing from his operation during a season when Doumit briefly worked with the Beets family. "I knew something wasn't right," Beets stated in his distinctive Dutch accent. "The numbers weren't adding up. When I confronted him, he denied everything and left my operation the next day. I should have reported my suspicions then, but without proof, it would have been my word against his." Beets described how his suspicions were first aroused when he noticed Doumit making unusual adjustments to the scale between weighs. He always had an explanation: calibration, dust interference, temperature adjustments, but something felt off. In mining, you develop instincts about who you can trust with your gold, and my instincts were screaming that something wasn't right. The case took a dramatic turn when federal agents revealed they had placed surveillance equipment in gold rooms across multiple mining operations after obtaining warrants based on initial evidence. The resulting footage, played in court over 3 days, showed Doumit systematically pocketing small amounts of gold dust and nuggets during the weighing and processing stages, amounts that would add up to substantial quantities over a mining season. In particularly damning footage from a cleanup at Schnabel's operation, Doumit could be seen carefully separating larger nuggets while the crew was celebrating, slipping several into a specialized pocket sewn into his vest. Other footage showed him making adjustments to scale readings when crew members were distracted or had left the gold room. Forensic accountants testified that the scheme had likely been operating for at least 8 seasons of the show, with estimated stolen gold valued at more than $16 million. Prosecutors demonstrated how Doumit had established a network of international buyers who purchased the stolen gold at slightly below market rates, no questions asked. The investigation uncovered a sophisticated system for transporting the stolen gold, involving a rotation of couriers who would meet Doumit at predetermined locations away from mining sites. One such courier, granted immunity in exchange for testimony, described how Doumit would transfer gold hidden in modified everyday items, including hollowed-out cigars, specially designed belt buckles, and even customized dentures with hidden compartments that Doumit would wear when traveling. "The level of planning was extraordinary," testified former courier Marcus Jennings. "Chris had contingency plans for every scenario. He provided us with cover stories, emergency contact protocols, and even had a system of signals to indicate whether we were being followed or if the exchange location had been compromised." The defense team, led by prominent attorney Melissa Watkins, attempted to portray Doumit as a scapegoat for wider industry practices. "My client is being singled out for activities that are common throughout the mining industry," Watkins argued. The prosecution has built their case on the testimony of individuals who had every incentive to distance themselves from these practices once they came to light. Watkins presented expert witnesses who testified about the inherent inaccuracies in gold weighing and the common practice of estimating gold weights for television purposes. The defense also questioned the reliability of surveillance footage, suggesting that what appeared to be theft could be explained as standard gold room procedures, viewed from misleading angles. This defense strategy collapsed when prosecutors produced Doumit's personal journals, seized during a raid on his Oregon home, which contained detailed records of the stolen gold amounts, transaction dates, and distribution, on channels. The journals, spanning nearly a decade, provided a meticulous accounting of the criminal enterprise. The journals revealed not only the amounts stolen, but also contained Doumit's personal reflections on the scheme, including entries where he expressed remorse alongside justifications for his actions. One entry, read aloud in court, stated, "Another 12 ounces today. Sometimes I wonder if this is worth the risk, but then I remember that mining companies have been stealing from workers for centuries. I'm just evening the score. Another journal entry detailed how Doumit had specifically targeted operations run by younger, less experienced miners. P's operation is ideal. He trusts completely and doesn't have the experience to spot the discrepancies. By the time he develops that instinct, I'll be long gone. Discovery Channel executives were called to testify about their gold verification procedures, with several acknowledging that the production relied heavily on the honesty of mining operations to report accurate figures. Executive producer Christo Doyle testified that the show had implemented only basic verification protocols, assuming that the competitive nature of the miners would prevent significant misreporting. Our primary concern was ensuring that miners weren't exaggerating their gold totals to appear more successful on television, Doyle explained. The possibility that someone might be systematically underreporting gold amounts simply wasn't on our radar. Our contracts required honest reporting, but we had limited mechanisms to verify the actual amounts. Todd Hoffman, who gave Doumit his start on the show when he hired him as a carpenter in early seasons, appeared shaken as he testified about his former friend's betrayal. His testimony included emotional accounts of how Doumit had become a father figure to many on the Hoffman crew, often providing advice and emotional support during difficult mining seasons. Chris was the last person I would have suspected, Hoffman stated. He was the heart and soul of our operation, someone everyone trusted implicitly. To learn that he was stealing from us the entire time, it's heartbreaking. Hoffman described how Doumit had transitioned from carpenter to goldroom operator, a position of tremendous trust in any mining operation. I gave him that opportunity because I believed in him. He had a way with people that made everyone feel comfortable leaving him in charge of our gold. Now I realize that was exactly what he wanted. The prosecution presented evidence that Doumit had specifically cultivated his on-screen persona to enhance his trustworthiness. Email communications between Doumit and various producers showed him suggesting scenes that would highlight his grandfatherly image, including the regular appearances of his wife bringing homemade meals to mining sites and segments focusing on his cigar collection and carpentry skills. He was consciously crafting a character, argued prosecutor Hargrove. A character designed specifically to be above suspicion, to be the last person anyone would accuse of systematic theft. Following the verdict, several jurors spoke anonymously about their deliberations. The evidence was simply overwhelming, said one male juror in his 50s. The journals, the video evidence, the financial records, it all painted a picture of someone who had meticulously planned and executed this scheme over many years. Another juror added, "What struck me was the calculated nature of it all. This wasn't opportunistic theft. This was a sophisticated criminal enterprise disguised behind a friendly smile and a cigar." A female juror with background in accounting described how the financial evidence had been particularly convincing. The way he structured his finances to hide the proceeds showed a level of premeditation that couldn't be explained away. The shell companies, the property purchases through intermediaries, the cryptocurrency conversions, these aren't actions taken on impulse. The case has prompted Discovery Channel to announce a complete overhaul of its verification procedures for all reality shows involving valuable commodities. In a statement, the network expressed shock at the verdict, while emphasizing that they had been unaware of any criminal activity during filming. "We are implementing rigorous new protocols to ensure the integrity of all our programs," the statement read. "Independent auditors will now verify all reported quantities of gold and other valuable materials featured on our shows. Additionally, we are establishing an anonymous reporting system for crew members and participants to flag suspicious activities without fear of retaliation." The network also announced the creation of a victim compensation fund for mining operations that suffered losses due to Doumit's activities, though legal experts noted that determining exact amounts stolen from each operation would be challenging given the length and complexity of the scheme. For the mining community portrayed on Gold Rush, the conviction has forced a painful reassessment of relationships and trust. Many miners who worked with Doumit over the years have expressed feelings of betrayal and disbelief, with several describing how Doumit had been invited into their homes and included in family celebrations. Dave Turin, who now hosts his own mining show on Discovery, described the sense of violation felt throughout the mining community. It's not just about the gold. It's about trusting someone with your livelihood, your dreams, your future, and then finding out they were undermining you the entire time. There are miners who had bad seasons, who lost claims or equipment, who might have survived if they'd had all the gold they actually mined. The investigation has expanded to examine whether Doumit had accomplices within various mining operations, though no additional charges have been filed. Several former crew members have acknowledged suspicions they failed to report, citing Doumit's reputation and their own uncertainty about the evidence of wrongdoing. Fred Lewis, a military veteran who joined the show in later seasons, summarized the sentiment shared by many. Chris was the guy everyone loved, the one person nobody had a bad word to say about. Finding out he was stealing from his friends and colleagues all along, it makes you question everything and everyone. The psychological impact on the mining community has been profound, with several miners describing a new atmosphere of suspicion that has replaced the camaraderie once characteristic of the industry. Security consultants specializing in mining operations have reported a surge in requests for enhanced monitoring systems for gold rooms and processing facilities. As Doumit was led from the courtroom in handcuffs, the once jovial miner appeared to have aged decades in the months since his arrest. His trademark smile was gone, replaced by a look of resignation. When asked if he had any comment on the verdict, Doumit shook his head slowly before turning to the gallery filled with former colleagues and friends. "The gold room is closed," he said quietly, before being escorted through the door to begin his life sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution, where he will likely spend his remaining years. The judge's sentencing remarks emphasized the breach of trust at the heart of the case. "Mr. Doumit, you exploited not only your position within these mining operations, but also the genuine affection and trust people had for you. Your crimes were not committed in a moment of weakness or desperation, but represented a sustained campaign of deception against people who considered you family." For fans of the show, the conviction casts a dark shadow over previous seasons, particularly the scenes of celebration during Gold Ways where Doumit presided over what were supposed to be moments of triumph for the mining crews. Social media has been flooded with viewers re-examining old episodes, identifying moments that now appear suspicious in light of the evidence presented at trial. Media analysts have noted that the case represents an unprecedented challenge for reality television, raising questions about the authenticity of all aspects of such programming. Several networks have announced reviews of their own reality shows, particularly those involving valuable commodities or cash transactions. Environmental and industry watchdog groups have called for a full audit of all mining operations featured on reality television, suggesting that Doumit's crimes may have had environmental implications if operations were pushed to mine more aggressively to compensate for missing gold. The Bureau of Land Management has announced increased scrutiny of permits issued to operations featured on television programs. Doumit's family, including his wife Sharon, who frequently appeared on the show bringing him homemade meals, have requested privacy as they come to terms with the verdict. Their attorney indicated they plan to appeal the sentence but acknowledged the strength of the evidence presented by the prosecution. Sharon Doumit, who was not implicated in the crimes, released a brief statement expressing shock at the revelations. "The man described in court is not the husband I've known for 50 years. I am trying to reconcile the Chris I love with the actions that have been proven in court. I ask for privacy and compassion as our family navigates this painful time." Investigators confirmed that Sharon Doumit had been cleared of any involvement, with evidence suggesting that Chris had gone to extraordinary lengths to hide his criminal activities from his family. Financial records showed that family expenses and investments were kept strictly separate from the proceeds of the gold theft. As the new mining season approaches, production crews are preparing to film, without one of the show's most familiar faces. Discovery Channel has confirmed that Gold Rush will continue, though industry insiders question whether viewers will ever watch gold room scenes with the same trust and enthusiasm. The case stands as a stark reminder that sometimes the most unlikely individuals can lead double lives, and that even in the age of reality television, the reality behind the cameras can be vastly different from what appears on screen. For Chris Doumit, the final Gold Way has concluded, and the total has proven devastating for the man once known as the heart and soul of Gold Rush. The mining community now faces the challenge of rebuilding trust while implementing new safeguards to prevent similar schemes in the future. As one miner put it outside the courthouse, Gold has always brought out both the best and worst in people. We just never expected the worst to come from someone we all considered the best among us.
A shocking development that has rocked the mining community and fans of reality television worldwide. Legendary gold miners Tony Beets and his son Mike Beets from the hit Discovery Channel show Gold Rush have been sentenced to life imprisonment. The verdict, delivered yesterday in a packed Yukon Territory courtroom, marks the stunning conclusion to what many are calling the most significant criminal case ever to emerge from the world of reality television mining. The father-son duo, known for their distinctive Dutch accents, colorful language, and aggressive mining tactics, were found guilty on multiple charges including massive environmental violations, claim jumping, fraudulent gold reporting, and what prosecutors described as a criminal conspiracy of unprecedented scale in modern mining history. The Beets family's infamous Paradise Hill operation, once showcased as a gold-producing powerhouse on television, has now been revealed as the headquarters of what authorities are calling a criminal empire built on deception and destruction. The investigation that led to the Beets' downfall began 3 years ago when competing miner Parker Schnabel, once mentored by Tony Beets, approached authorities with suspicions about unusual mining practices he had observed while working adjacent claims. What started as routine inquiries quickly escalated as investigators uncovered evidence of systematic environmental code violations that dwarfed anything previously seen in the Klondike. What we discovered went far beyond cutting corners to maximize profits, explained lead prosecutor Catherine Whitehorse. The evidence revealed deliberate and sustained efforts to circumvent virtually every environmental protection regulation in the territory, resulting in damage that experts estimate will take decades to remediate. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Robert Tremaine delivered the unprecedented sentence, his voice steady but grave. Mr. Beets and son, the court has carefully considered the overwhelming evidence presented and the jury's unanimous verdict on all counts. The scale and systematic nature of your crimes, coupled with your complete lack of remorse, leaves this court no alternative but to impose the maximum sentence allowed by law. You are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Tony Beets, the 75-year-old patriarch known for his Viking-like appearance and profanity-laden directives, remained stoic as the sentence was read, his trademark confident demeanor finally broken only when his son Mike, 35, was also given the same punishment. Mike, who had increasingly taken over day-to-day operations of the family mining empire in recent seasons, appeared visibly shaken as the reality of his future sank in. The trial, which lasted 11 weeks, featured testimony from numerous familiar faces from the Gold Rush series, creating a surreal atmosphere where television personalities were suddenly cast in the role of key witnesses in a high-stakes criminal proceeding. The most damning testimony came from former Beets crew members who detailed how they were instructed to perform environmentally destructive practices when cameras weren't rolling. Rick Ness, another prominent miner from the show who once worked closely with both the Beets family and Parker Schnabel, provided crucial testimony about conversations he had witnessed between Tony and Mike regarding what prosecutors termed the dual mining strategy. Legitimate operations for television filming and far more destructive, unregulated practices conducted during off-camera hours. Tony always said there was television mining and real mining, Ness testified, visibly uncomfortable as he faced his former colleagues across the courtroom. He was explicit that certain practices should never be filmed and made sure we understood the consequences of speaking about them outside the crew. Perhaps the most explosive testimony came from Minnie Beets, Tony's wife of over 40 years and the family's longtime bookkeeper. In a move that stunned observers, Minnie agreed to testify against her husband and son in exchange for immunity, providing detailed financial records that showed systematic underreporting of gold production and elaborate schemes to sell unreported gold through black market channels. Minnie's decision to cooperate with prosecutors has reportedly divided the Beets family, with daughters Monica and Bianca Beets publicly supporting their mother, while expressing shock and dismay at the evidence presented against their father and brother. Both women were present for the verdict, but declined to speak with media afterward, leaving the courthouse through a private exit. Parker Schnabel, whose initial report sparked the investigation, testified for 3 full days about his observations while working claims adjacent to the Beets operation. The 30-year-old mining prodigy, who began on the show as a teenager, learning the business from his grandfather, detailed numerous instances where he observed suspicious activities at night on Beets-controlled land. "I respected Tony. He taught me a lot when I was starting out," Schnabel testified, maintaining steady eye contact with his former mentor. "But over time, I saw things that couldn't be explained by legitimate mining practices. When water that should have been clear was running black with contaminants onto my claim at 3 a.m., and when test samples from that water showed levels of mercury and other chemicals that aren't used in legal operations, I had a responsibility to report it." The courtroom dynamics were further complicated by the presence of numerous Discovery Channel producers and crew members who were compelled to testify about what they had witnessed while filming the series. Several producers claimed they had no knowledge of illegal activities, while others admitted to suspicions they failed to report out of concern for the show's continued success. Executive producer Christo Doyle, who has appeared on the show's after-show segments, testified that the production team had strict protocols about environmental compliance during filming, but acknowledged they had limited visibility into operations during the extensive off-camera periods. Gold Rush films approximately 15% of the actual mining season, Doyle explained under cross-examination. "We have no way of monitoring what happens during the remaining 85% of the time. We relied on the integrity of our mining operators and their compliance with local regulations." The case has raised serious questions about reality television production oversight, with critics arguing that the financial incentives of successful shows can create environments where illegal activities are implicitly encouraged through lack of scrutiny. Discovery Channel has issued a statement expressing shock at the verdict and denying any knowledge of illegal operations. Fred Lewis, a military veteran who joined the show in later seasons, testified about a disturbing conversation he had with Tony Beets during a rare social gathering of the show's cast. Tony was several drinks in and started bragging about how the stupid environmental regulations didn't apply to him because he knew how to work around them. "I thought he was just talking tough," which was his persona on the show. "I never imagined the scale of what was actually happening." The prosecution presented extensive environmental evidence, including before and after satellite imagery of areas mined by the Beets operation, showing massive unauthorized diversions of waterways and destruction of protected wetlands. Environmental scientists testified that some areas had mercury and other heavy metal contamination at levels more than 200 times legal limits. Todd Hoffman, who appeared in earlier seasons of the show before leaving to pursue other ventures, was called as a character witness by the defense, a strategy that backfired spectacularly when prosecutors used the opportunity to question Hoffman about previous conflicts with Tony Beets. "Yes, Tony and I had our differences," Hoffman acknowledged. "He called my operation amateur and inefficient. Looking back, I wonder if that was because I was trying to do things by the book, while he apparently wasn't constrained by regulations." The case took an even more sensational turn when evidence emerged that the Beets operation had allegedly encroached on claims belonging to other miners featured on the show, secretly mining gold from land they didn't own. Dave Turin, who now stars in his own spin-off show Gold Rush, Dave Turin's Lost Mine, testified about discovering unusual excavation patterns along the boundaries of a claim he worked several years ago. "At the time, I couldn't prove anything, but the math wasn't adding up," Turin stated. Areas that should have had recoverable gold based on our testing were coming up empty, as if someone had already been there. Now I understand what was happening. The defense team, led by high-profile attorney Jonathan Blackwood, attempted to portray the case as selective prosecution, driven by jealousy of the Beets family's success and Tony's outsized television persona. This strategy gained little traction as prosecutors methodically presented environmental test results, financial records, and testimony from former employees who participated in the illegal operations. My client is a colorful character who plays a role for television, Blackwood argued during closing statements. The prosecution has confused Tony Beets, the television personality, with Tony Beets, the businessman. This case represents an unprecedented overreach by authorities who have been influenced by the dramatic portrayal of mining on television rather than the realities of the industry. This defense strategy collapsed entirely when prosecutors played secretly recorded conversations between Tony and Mike Beets, discussing specific techniques to hide environmental violations from inspectors. In one particularly damning recording, Tony could be heard instructing his son on the timing of illegal mercury use to coincide with periods when inspectors were known to be in other regions. Following the verdict, several jurors agreed to speak anonymously about their deliberations. "The evidence was simply overwhelming," said one female juror in her 40s. "We tried to approach the case with an open mind to separate the television persona from the actual business practices. But what we saw and heard demonstrated a clear and consistent pattern of intentional criminal activity." Another juror, a man with background in the mining industry, added, "As someone who understands mining operations, I was shocked by the calculated nature of the violations. This wasn't about making mistakes or misunderstanding regulations. The Beets operation designed their entire business model around circumventing environmental protections to maximize profits. The damage they've caused to Yukon waterways is incalculable." The case has sent shockwaves through the mining community in the Yukon, where the economic impact of gold rush tourism has been significant over the show's run. Local business owners expressed mixed emotions about the verdict, acknowledging the serious nature of the crimes while expressing concern about the potential impact on the region's reputation. "Tony Beets put the Klondike back on the map for a lot of people," said longtime Dawson City resident Marion Clark. "The show brought tourists and interest to our region, but we can't condone the damage that's been done to our land. Mining has always been our livelihood, but responsible mining that respects the environment has to be the standard." As Tony and Mike Beets begin their lives behind bars, questions remain about the future of the family's extensive mining claims and equipment. Prosecutors have indicated that a separate civil proceeding will determine the disposition of assets, with significant portions likely to be liquidated to fund environmental remediation efforts in affected areas. For Discovery Channel, the conviction represents an unprecedented crisis for one of its flagship programs. The network has announced it will continue Gold Rush with its remaining mining operations, though industry insiders question whether the show can maintain its popularity without the outsized presence of the Beets family. Chris Doumit, the beloved former carpenter turned gold room operator who has appeared on the show alongside various mining teams, expressed the sentiment shared by many cast members when approached outside the courthouse. "This is a sad day for everyone involved. Nobody wins here. The land has been damaged, lives have been destroyed, and a shadow has been cast over an industry filled with hard-working, honest people who do things the right way." As corrections officers led Tony and Mike Beets from the courtroom in handcuffs, the elder Beets finally broke his silence, turning to the gallery packed with media, former colleagues, and spectators. In a moment reminiscent of his television appearances, but stripped of all bravado, he simply stated, "The Viking has fallen," before being escorted through the door that would separate him from the mining empire he spent decades building. For fans of Gold Rush, the conviction forces a re-evaluation of episodes watched over the years. with scenes of the Beets family's mining triumphs now cast in a sinister new light. Environmental groups have already begun using clips from the show alongside evidence from the trial to create educational materials about the importance of mining regulations. The case also raises difficult questions about the responsibility of reality television producers to ensure that the activities they film and profit from are conducted legally and ethically. Several network executives from various channels have called for industry-wide discussions about establishing clearer protocols for verifying regulatory compliance in shows featuring extractive industries. Kevin Beets and Monica Beets, Tony's other children who frequently appeared on the show working in the family operation, were not charged in the case after evidence indicated they were not involved in the decision-making regarding illegal practices. Both have released a joint statement expressing shock at the extent of the violations while requesting privacy as they determine next steps for their personal and professional lives. As the Yukon mining community prepares for the upcoming season, without two of its most prominent figures, the consequences of the Beets conviction continue to reverberate through the industry. Local authorities have announced increased inspection protocols for all mining operations, while Discovery Channel has implemented additional compliance officers who will maintain a presence at filming locations even when cameras aren't rolling. The unprecedented life sentences for Tony and Mike Beets stand as a stark warning about the serious consequences of environmental crimes and the dangers of believing that celebrity status might shield wrongdoers from accountability. For a man who frequently proclaimed himself the king of the Klondike on television, Tony Beets now faces the reality of spending his remaining years not as mining royalty, but as federal prisoner number 8867539, his empire of dirt washed away by the justice he thought he could evade.